All right, Don Quixote, chapter 1. Yes. I told them, so these books were used before I came to teach here, and the teacher numbered them differently than I do. So your number is in the bottom. All right, let's see how far we can get. Don Quixote, chapter 1. Introduction. Nope, just kidding. Chapter 1. An old school gentleman gone mad. Once upon a time, there lived in a village in Spain, in the province of La Mancha, one of those gentlemen of the old school who keep an ancient lance and shield hung up in their hall, and maintain a riding horse and a hunting dog. About 3/4 of the income of this particular gentleman went into household expenses. The remainder of his money served to keep him in decent clothes, with a best suit for Sundays and holidays, and one of good homespun for everyday use. What does homespun mean? Brooklyn, read that, please. And online people, you guys have that in your books as well, so just go ahead and read that. So he used most of his money for, he would have like one good holiday suit, and then he would have one kind of everyday regular suit. His household consisted of an elderly housekeeper, a niece of his under 20, and a handyman who could help in the house or outdoors, and was equally good at saddling the horse or wielding the pruning knife. Our gentleman was about 50. He was thin, but tough of body, with a lean face, a very early riser, and a great lover of hunting. His name was Quixania. Say Quixania. That was his name. This elderly gentleman got into the habit of reading romances of chivalry. What is chivalry, Luke? Very good. So I just told you about how Don Quixote, which you'll meet in just a minute, was a man who had become obsessed with these romantic chivalry novels. Okay, so we talked about how that's like King Arthur, Sir Lancelot, Sir Gawain, High King Peter, all the story, like your classic story of knights going to save the princess who's in the damsel in distress, right? Then they fall in love and live happily ever after in the kingdom of fairies. That's like the romances of chivalry. Okay, he was obsessed with these stories, and he read so many of them that he began to think in terms of chivalry novels. Okay, almost like he wasn't living in the real world. He saw everything as part of a story. Okay, so keep watching or keep listening. He became so. Oh, no, hold on. He got into the habit of reading romances of chivalry with such ardor and intensity. That means such love and intensity that at last he just lost interest in hunting, and he even neglected his daily concerns. He became so passionate about the subject that he even sold several acres of good cropland in order to buy as many books about chivalry as he could lay his hands on. He sold part of his land to get more money to buy more chivalry books because he was so obsessed. He passed whole days and even whole nights studying the preposterous adventures of Don Bellianus, Amadis of Gaul, and other knights, until at last his brain became so agitated and his judgment so warped that he resolved, or decided, to become a knight himself and ride about the world, setting wrongs right and seeking adventures. Thank you. So he eventually became so obsessed with knights and these stories that he finally decided, you know what? I'm going to run around and be a knight too. I'm going to go around saving people. So the first thing he did was polish up some old armor that had belonged to his ancestors and had lain for ages in a corner and was now covered with dust and rust. Having cleaned and adjusted them as best he could, he found he had one great deficiency. Out of all the armor he found in his house, there was one thing he was missing. There was no helmet. only a simple steel cap. However, his ingenuity or his creativeness soon made up for this defect. By means of some cardboard, he made a visor that, when fixed to the little steel cap, gave the appearance of being a complete helmet. Alright, look up here. Let me show you what he did. He had a little tiny steel cap. Think like a small little silver bowl. Okay? That was his only hat. His only helmet of protection. Okay? He then took cardboard, like a cardboard box, and he cut it up and made himself a little shield in front of his face. Okay? He probably cut some holes for his eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And that was his helmet of armor.
But did he like paint it to look like silver?
It doesn't say so.
So he just put some.
But Caleb's
brown.
response was right. The minute I said he cut cardboard and put it on to make his helmet, Caleb went, no. Yeah, that's exactly right. There's no way it's going to be a good helmet. But that was all he had. Unfortunately, though, he got the idea to test this helmet's strength for resisting cuts. And so, drawing his sword, he made one stroke at it, and in one instant demolished the work that had taken him a whole week. Deciding to make something stronger than cardboard, he got strips of iron and made them as a lining to the cardboard. He then declared his new visor was sufficiently strong, without risking any more experiments on it. Did he test his new and improved visor?
Yes. No.
He tested the first one and slashed it immediately. He made the new one, and did he test that one?
No.
No. He's like, oh, that's good. He next turned his attention to his horse. And although this animal had about as many points as a mariner's compass, and was only skin and bone, it appeared to him to be a charger superior to the Bucephalus of Alexander. Okay, what do you think a horse should look like? Skin and bone, and pointy with bones sticking everywhere, or nice and fat and strong?
First one.
The second one.
Middle.
Okay.
Middle.
However, Don Quixote's horse looked like the first. Small, old, weak, skinny, skin and bone everywhere. Hardly any muscle. But when he looked at it, he thought it was as great as the horse in this picture. The Bucephalus of Alexander.
That's so cool.
Legendary for his speed and courage, Bucephalus was the favorite horse of Alexander the Great, the conqueror of the ancient world. After Bucephalus died of battle wounds at the old age of 30, Alexander founded a city named for him in what is now Pakistan. So, we now have Don Quixote with his helmet that he made of cardboard, his horse of skin and bone, and he is now ready to go and take on the world. He spent 4 days considering what he should name this wonderful animal. He said to himself that it would not be proper that the horse of so famous a knight, that he was going to be, and an animal itself so excellent, should be without a very worthy name. He therefore sought a name that would indicate at once what the horse was and what it had been. After making up and rejecting many possible names, he at last fixed on Rocinante. To his thinking, it was a lofty and resonant name, and it signified that the horse that before had been a mere hack was now the foremost of all the hacks in the world. What is a hack? Edgar? So, just by naming this horse Rocinante, he is now as powerful as a great stallion. Okay? All I did was change his name, but now he is a strong stallion. Having given his horse a name so much to his taste, he wanted a new name for himself, too. He thought about it for 8 days more, and at last decided in favor of Don Quixote. Remembering that the valiant Amadis did not call himself simply Amadis, but added the name of his country to it, so Don Quixote wished to enlarge his name to Don Quixote de la Mancha, Thereby, he judged, he made clear his origin and honored his country by adopting its name. So, his original name was Kixania. Once he renamed his horse and made it so wonderful and great, he now wanted to rename himself. He named himself Don Quixote, which in Spanish, Don is like Sir, right? Okay, so instead of saying like Sir Lancelot or Sir Gawain, it's like a title of respect. Don is a title of respect. So Don Quixote, like Sir Quixote, and then de la Mancha. Okay, de in this form in Spanish is typically used as of, correct? So in Spanish, this is like saying Don Quixote of La Mancha. Okay, you would put where you're from. So Miss Dorsling de Atlanta, Georgia. Miss Dorsling of Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, or Sir Lancelot de Camelot. Sir Lancelot of Camelot. Okay, so Don Quixote added de La Mancha because he is from the country of La Mancha. I'm not going to stop, guys. I have to keep going. He saw nothing left to do but to find a lady to be in love with. For a knight errant without a lady love was like a tree without leaves or fruit, or a body without a soul. For, he said to himself, if on account of my sins or by good fortune I should meet, I don't know, a giant, which is a common occurrence for knights, and cut him into two pieces, or in some way vanquish him, it would be well to have some lady to whom I could order him to present himself. So what he means by that is this. Typically in the stories of romantic chivalry, whenever the knight would defeat an evil being, they would tell that person, go and tell this woman that I love that I beat you. That way she knows how awesome I am. Okay? So Don Quixote is like, hold on. If I defeat a giant, I got to have a lady love. I got to have this girl that I'm in love with to tell him to go and talk to. Otherwise, who is he going to talk about my glory to? I have to have this girl I'm in love with. So, he's now going to find a girlfriend. Or at least a girl he wants to be his girlfriend. On his arrival, he would throw himself on his knees before the fair one, this girl that he loves, and say in a humble voice, I, my lady, am the giant Caraculiambro, who has been vanquished in single combat by Don Quixote de la Mancha, who can never be too highly praised, and who has commanded me to present myself before your ladyship in order that you may dispose of me as you please. This idea pleased him greatly. In his own neighborhood, there was a very good-looking farmer's daughter, whom he had once been smitten with, though she did not seem to know or care anything about him. Her name was Aldonza Lorenzo, and he thought her fit to be the lady of his heart. He sought for a name for her that would be suggestive of a princess. In the end, he called her Dulcinea del Toboso, since she was a native of Toboso, a name that seemed to him musical and significant, like all the others he had already adopted. Everything now being ready, so he's like, I got my helmet, I got my armor, I got my horse, and I got my girl. Everything now being ready, and thinking the world might suffer if he were tardy, he lost no time in starting on his mission. One morning before daybreak, on one of the hottest days in July, he donned his armor, meaning he put on his armor, he mounted on his horse Rocinante, stole away through a private gate of his yard, and reached open country, greatly pleased with how easily he had begun. But his joy was short-lived. He became sad pretty soon. He suddenly remembered that he had not been dubbed a knight in the proper form, and that, according to the laws of chivalry, he had no right to wear anything but white armor, nor to carry a device on his shield until he had earned one through his exploits. Read about white armor, please. Why could he only wear white armor? Jacob?
A young man about to be made a knight first confessed all his past deeds, and then he put on white a white tunic to symbolize his purity on entering into the order of chivalry. The ceremony of conferring knighthood had similarities to the Christian ritual of baptism.
Good. So until a knight was actually dubbed by another knight, okay? So when they would do the sword on both shoulders, right, and declare them a knight, they had no right but to wear anything but white armor, okay? Then once they were dubbed officially, they could wear actual knight's armor. Okay, it was like a signification of they have now become an official knight. Okay? And he realizes, hold on, I haven't been dubbed officially. Okay? I have no right to carry a shield with my own device. The device is like the crest, family crest, like your knight's shield. What's it called? Logo? Emblem? Is it called device? Emblem. Whatever the case, he had no right to carry anything that had that logo because he hadn't been made a knight yet. Nope. So great was his concern at this discovery that he almost turned back. But, reflecting that this would not mend matters, and his folly overcoming every other impulse, he continued on, resolving to get himself knighted by the first knight he would come across, according to examples in books he had read. As to the white armor, he would scour his own, or he would scrub that silver so much till it would become whiter than ermine. Having satisfied his mind in this way, he allowed his horse to follow whatever road it pleased, considering this to be the true spirit of adventure. So he let the horse go wherever it wanted, and he just rode along. They jogged along all day, Don Quixote glorying in thoughts of what future historians would write about him, and in the meantime, suffering enough intense heat from the sun to melt his brains, if he had any. Night approached without any adventure. As both horse and rider were quite worn out and almost dead from hunger, Don Quixote began to look for a castle, or a shepherd's hut, where he could find food and rest. At last he saw an inn. Jacob, put the mask on correctly and follow along. At last he saw an inn, not far from the road, and reached it just before nightfall. By the door there stood a couple of young wenches, which are kind of like servants, who were on their way to Seville, which is just a chief city in South Spain, and stopping for the night at the inn. Now, as everything he thought, saw, or imagined was tinted and transformed by the nonsense he gathered from his books of chivalry, he at once pictured this little inn as a castle with 4 towers, spires of polished silver, a drawbridge and moat, and all the usual features of castles and romances. Okay, pause. Remember how I told you one of the main themes was how Don Quixote sees things and how everybody else sees them. So he comes up to this regular old inn, this regular old hotel, but to him, it's this massive castle. Okay? Pulling up his steed, or his horse, a little distance away, he waited for a dwarf or a page to announce his arrival by the blast of a trumpet from the battlements. But, finding there was some unexpected delay, and Rocinante being impatient to get to the stable, he advanced nearer to the door. There, he caught the sight of the 2 girls already mentioned, the servants at the door, who appeared to him to be 2 beautiful damsels. Just then it happened that a pig driver blew on his horn to call his herd from a nearby field. At once Don Quixote recognized this as the signal of his arrival. So, with extreme self-satisfaction, he approached the ladies, who at the sight of a man so strangely outfitted and bearing a lance and shield, became alarmed and turned to go indoors. But Don Quixote gracefully raised his cardboard visor, revealing his lean, dusty face, and in soothing tones addressed them. Now, before I get to this, let me explain what happened when he's calling, okay? Ian, step outside for a minute.
Oh, cool. Can I be the trumpeter?
No. Okay. Typically, when a knight would arrive at a castle, okay, the knight would arrive and there was a page that would stand there. He would bang his little stick and he would announce the knight. So it would be like this. And I would go, announcing Sir Ian Bromfield of, where do you live? Louisville.
Great job, Ian. Great job.
And there would be a trumpeter. Okay. Now, when Don Quixote pulls up to this inn that he imagines is a castle, he is waiting for a page to announce his arrival. Okay? But he's not at an actual castle. So he pulls up on his little steed, which you can imagine he's probably like really tired by now, barely making it, okay? And Don Quixote's just on here like this big, wonderful knight, you know. He rides up. He's waiting for his announcement. It never comes. He's like, okay, must be, off duty today or something. He gets off his horse, and a pig driver in the field next door. He blows his horn for the sheep to come in. And Don Quixote's like, oh, that must be my signal. And like stands up to announce himself. But it was the pig driver next door. Okay? Now, he's talking to these servants as if they are princesses. Now, watch what he says. In a soothing tone, he's trying to like flirt with them, basically. Yeah, charm them. Oh, do not fly, gentle ladies, and do not be in the least uneasy, for it would ill become a member of the order of chivalry to which I belong, to do wrong to anyone, let alone such exalted young ladies as your appearance indicates you to be. The girls were astonished and amused at being addressed in this fashion, but not as surprised as the landlord, the owner of the inn, a fat, good-natured fellow who just then came out to receive his odd-looking guest. He helped him down, attended to his wounds and his wants and those of Rocinante, and in the course of conversation readily made out the kind of madness from which the stranger suffered. The more Don Quixote talked, the more the landlord of the inn owner knew how insane he was. The host happened to know a great deal about the romances of knight-errant, and he could not resist the chance to play along with the folly of Don Quixote in order to amuse himself and his guests, who were mostly passing herdsmen and mule drivers. So, the innkeeper, he realized this guy is insane. He thinks he's actually a knight living in like a fairy tale. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to play along with it just because it's funny to me. But he knows it's really reality, but he's playing along with Don Quixote. Okay? As soon as Don Quixote had satisfied his hunger, he approached the innkeeper and, falling on his knees before him, begged him, in very flowery language, to please dub him a knight. His lordship graciously agreed, but reminded Don Quixote that he must first pass a whole night watching his armor. Don Quixote then asked to be taken to the chapel to lay his armor in front of the altar. The host explained that the chapel had recently been demolished so that it might be rebuilt, and suggested that the ceremony take place in the courtyard. Such a thing might be done in case of necessity, he said, as was recorded in the histories of famous knights. Okay, so Don Quixote comes in and he's like, please, sir, will you please dub me a knight? And the landlord, playing along with him, right, says, oh, I guess so, but don't forget, before I dub you a knight, you have to spend a whole night watching your armor, making sure no one steals it. And Don Quixote's like, oh, you're so right. Where's the church? Where's the altar that I can go and lay my armor before the Lord and watch it all night long to make sure nothing happens to it? I must do my duty. And the landlord's like, the chapel's being rebuilt right now, so I suggest you do it in the courtyard. Is the chapel really being rebuilt?
No.
No. He doesn't have a chapel. This is an inn we're talking about, not a castle. Okay? So he's just, you have to imagine he's kind of like cackling the whole time. I mean, the altar's being, or the chapel's being rebuilt right now. So we'll do it in the courtyard with the stinky animals. I mean, with the outside in the fresh air. Yes.
So with the dubbing thing, it's kind of like, I'm pretty casting, I don't remember at the end, that Peter, casting, and casting the drunken.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Exactly.
Also, is there supposed to be a bunch of underlines in the book?
Nope. A lot of these are old books, remember? So if you have markings in them, just don't add to them and ignore them. So Don Quixote removed his armor and put it in a trough in one of the yards of the inn. For hours he marched up and down in front of it, lance in hand, in the bright moonlight, to the amusement of the landlord and his friends. It happened, as the night wore on, that one of the mule drivers came into the yard to fetch water for his mules, and was unfortunate enough to lay his hands on that armor in order to move it out of the way. He had hardly done so when the vigilant Don Quixote gave him such a thwack on the head with his lance that he was knocked out. Kind of like, don't you dare touch my armor. Then the knight calmly continued his march until a second mule driver, on the same errand, approached the trough and began handling the armor. The second driver promptly met the same fate as the first one. Okay, I need you to stop because I'm running out of time. I'm having to wait too much for you, okay? The comrades, or the co-workers and friends of the injured men, coming to learn what was going on, rushed into the yard in anger and began pelting the knight with anything they could find. Don Quixote bravely stood his ground, sheltering himself with his shield as best as he could, and hurling defiance and threats back. Now, how the fight might have ended is impossible to say, had it not been for the arrival of the landlord. Fearing that he was responsible for letting the joke go a little too far, he anxiously called on the drivers to stop their attack, reminding them that they were dealing with a madman who could not be held accountable for his actions, even if he killed some of them. He's like, guys, this man's crazy. Just leave him alone. I'll deal with it, but you don't want to fight with him because he might end up actually killing you. In this way, the tumult came to an end. The landlord next considered how he could speedily get rid of his dangerous guest. He decided that the best and safest way to do that would be to hurry through a ceremony of knighting. He persuaded Don Quixote that his vigil had lasted long enough, and proceeded hastily with the formalities. He brought out the account book he kept track of his hay and barley in, and pretended to read prayers over it from the kneeling knight. He rapped him twice in the shoulders and neck pretty sharply, and declared him a member of the Order of Chivalry. The two girls then buckled on his sword and spurs, and wished him success in battle. Don Quixote gracefully responded, mounted his gallant steed, took a courteous farewell of the lord and ladies of the castle, and sallied forth in quest of new adventures. The landlord thought it best not to ask for the money he was owed. Okay, let me show you real quickly what the landlord did. So, all of a sudden in the middle of the night, let me adjust this so they can see what I'm doing. In the middle of the night, the landlord says, okay, I gotta get rid of this guy. He's causing way too many problems. So, how can I get rid of him? Well, let me make him a knight real quick, and then I'll just send him on his way. So, Caleb, come here. Stay right here so they can see you in the video too. Okay, so, he's like, okay, you are now, okay, awesome. Let me find my prayer book. Yeah, let me get that, okay. He grabs, like, his checkbook, where he keeps track of all his hay and barley. He's like, okay, I the innkeeper, the Lord innkeeper of this castle, pray blessing upon you, and you hope you have great battles, and you are now a knight. Just like, yep, okay, bye. Sends him on his way. Okay, that was the idea. He was not a real knighting ceremony, obviously. His idea was, let me get this guy a knight, so he thinks, as fast as possible, and get him out of here, because he is beating up my guests. Okay? And at the end, he says, you know what, this guy's really kind of cuckoo in the head, so I'm not going to even worry about asking for him to pay for his room for the night, because I just need him gone. Okay? So, that's our introduction to Don Quixote.